Professor Laura Rovelli, thank you very much for joining our interview series. Let me start right away with the first question. Milei's program prioritized radical market deregulation, dollarization, and the shrinking of the state. From a political theory perspective, how does this agenda challenge or redefine the idea of the common good in Argentina's democracy?
Okay, it's a very interesting question because in this scenario that assumes the conditions, or in the scenario that current capitalism is assuming in our region based on unresolved historical tensions and inequalities, processes are unfolding that challenge the very knowledge and education sense as a common good, and the idea also of university education as a right. So in this complex context, characterized by strong processes of political fragmentation between various progressive movements, traditional neoconservative sectors, and since 2023 and even before, extreme right forces, economic adjustment policies, and different strategies are making life more precarious, and they are affecting how we are sustaining common goods. So, of course, this deepens the pre-existing inequalities by widening the gap in the distribution of social goods, including knowledge and education, and reduce the political and social meaning of rights, and even challenge the existence of the right to university or the right to education, and wider the idea of knowledge as a common good.
Right. Given your expertise in research policy and knowledge systems, how does Milei's administration engage with or marginalize scientific and academic expertise in policymaking? What implications does this have for evidence-based governance?
Well, this is a crucial point. First of all, we might say that there are severe budget cuts that are being implemented. There's a real reduction in the salaries of teaching, research, and administrative staff, cuts in scholarships, in funding for research and outreach projects, and also in the infrastructure and operational capacity of universities. This explicitly weakens their institutional framework and also undermines their capacity of autonomy. But secondly, the government has dismantled science, technology, and innovation bodies, agencies, departments, and programs linked to higher education, science, human rights, and culture, and has also intensified trends towards commercialization and privatization of education and knowledge in general. In addition, for example, the recruitment of research careers has been a standstill since December 2023, affecting more than 1,200 researchers who have been approved but have not been able to take their positions in the scientific system. There are very few openings for small numbers of new recruits, and this has already led to a 20% drop in the number of applicants for the scientific career and doctoral and postdoctoral fellowships. Third, the government has deployed anti-science and a denialist rhetoric that attacks and seeks to discredit and undermine the institutions of science and higher education. In particular, there has been a denial or disqualification of issues such as gender, inclusion, inequalities, climate change, among others. For example, state agencies dealing with gender and human rights issues have been dismantled, such as the Ministry of Women and the Argentine National Institute Against Discrimination, which was created in the middle of the 1990s. And we might say that also at the school system level, the implementation of a comprehensive sex education law, which was created in the early at the beginning of the 21st century, have been subsumed to emotional literacy, and training has been led by private organizations. So this threat to, there is also a threat to social sciences, humanities, and arts, and they had been displaced of the research agenda, prioritizing exclusively technical areas considered to be productive, such as energy, mining, health, and technology, certain areas of health. So in this context, there is an erosion of the evidence base of policies, complemented by bias from the government in the rhetoric that combines false and biased information with a strong aggressive tone also in the interventions.
Right. Historically, Argentina's public education system has been central to shaping civic identity and democratic values. How do you assess its current role in the face of Milei's anti-establishment discourse and market-oriented reforms?
Yes, clearly the Argentine university system was characterized traditionally by a public state matrix that constitutes its identity and that can be observed in quantitative terms, in terms of enrollment, distribution, supply, and weight of public state sector resources, and symbolically due to the central role played by national universities within the higher education institutions, reflecting traditionally a system with a low level of privatization in comparison with other countries in our region. But in recent years, there has been an exacerbation of privatization and commodification processes in higher education. This was not new, but it was exacerbated under Milei administration. So in that term, we can say that Argentina is facing one of the deepest crises of its higher education and scientific system since the return of democracy in 1983. Just to mention some information in terms of the gross domestic product, the university budget fell from 0.72% in 2023 to 0.57 in 2024, and is estimated to be 0.43 in 2025. And the real weight of professors declined during Milei administration, almost 30% compared with November 23. And also we can say that the lack of will of the president to implement the 2025 university financing law, a bill that was approved by an overwhelming majority in both chambers of the Congress, and that aims solely to restore the lost funding due to inflation, leaves the system without a basic floor to function. By postponing its implementation, the executive power disregards the separation of powers and also violates established rights in our democratic system. So in this scenario, the role of Argentina's public education system in shaping civic identity and democratic values is under siege and threatened, but remains a place and remains a place of dispute and tension, and also a possibility for building more democratic and more democratic educational social projects with the people as we are that are fighting and are defending the public system.
Right. Milei and his allies have criticized public universities as ideologically captured. How do such narratives affect academic freedom and the social legitimacy of higher education as a space for critical thought and democratic engagement?
Yes, clearly academic freedom in this context is being affected in different ways and through different actions by the government. There is harassment, persecution, and censorships of academic teachers, researchers, scientists, and artists promoting hate, speech, and violence. In material terms, there is an elimination of opportunities for dialogue and collective bargaining with teachers' unions, trade unions. There is harassment and expulsion of members of migrant academic communities, barriers to international academic mobility. This also restricts research agendas and the relationship with local issues, public policies, and global consensus on key issues such as health and environment. For example, the Argentine government announced its withdrawal from the World Health Organization in February 2025, although this process faces legal obstacles and its effectiveness is still under discussion because there are many movements that are fighting legally against this withdrawal. The decision that the government took is based on the profound differences in health management and in the position these international bodies interfere with the national sovereignty, aligning with the speech of President Donald Trump in the United States. So there are many consequences of these attacks on science, knowledge, and also academic freedom nowadays in our country.
Right. From your work on knowledge and open science as commons, how might we understand education itself as both a public good and a political battleground in Argentina's ongoing struggle between neoliberal and democratic populist projects?
Well, I would like to mention that regarding knowledge and science as common good, Argentina was one of the first countries in the region to have, for example, an open access law. Public universities are the main promoters of, for example, Diamond Open Access in the region. That is an open access that you don't have to pay to publish nor to read, and that there is a vigorous movement of citizen science, scientific outrage, and university extension, what we call here, that is this relationship with society, that is mainly led by universities. So it's not a coincidence that these institutions, universities, are the targets of the aggression and the cutbacks by a pro-market and anti-statist government, and that through state defunding, private education and the commodification of knowledge are explicitly promoted.
Right. In Argentina's polarized climate, can any political actor, including the opposition, still credibly articulate a notion of the common good that transcends ideological fragmentation and social resentment?
Well, it is a very complex process at the moment, but we are confident that it is possible in the medium and long term to recover this notion and to strengthen the notion and the practices of common goods, particularly from subnational and local governments, and also in dialogue with universities, social and territorial movements in Argentina.
How have trade unions, student movements, feminist groups, and universities responded to Milei's agenda? Do you see these actors as potential sources of democratic renewal or as fragmented voices of resistance?
Well, I think that there are many movements of resistance, and and that they have and that they are potential sources of democratic renewal, focusing particularly on universities and science movements. Higher education and scientific institutions have implemented many legal measures. They have been close together. For example, in the National Inter-University Council, remains united and has drawn up different measures such as legal actions. They made the draft of the university funding bill. They presented in the Congress to seek and guarantee the university funding. They have made several formal requests to the governments. They have rejected the diminishing of the budget for 2026. And of course, they have led federal mobilization and all over the country that had the support also of the unions of students. So they have been coordinating different actions together to defend public goods, education, and public education in our system. We also have another important network, which is the Argentine Network of Science and Technology Institute Authorities, that has made also progress organizing mass demonstrations that had the support of common citizens. They have gathered international support. They have requests for access to public information on scientific issues that has also been denied for the government. They had also, they are working in different sessions to coordinate different strategies and actions to demand the funding resources for the scientific sector and the governing of several areas of the scientific sector that have not been designed. So there is a lack of also I would say, of management of the scientific sector, because the government has denied to approve or to assign authorities. From the Latin American Council of Social Sciences, a program on qualitative and comparative studies in the Americas has been funded to allow comparative studies, to expand alliances between teachers and students. At universities, deliberative and collegial spaces in some of the institutions have been strengthened. Some of them had or are starting to develop protocols for actions in the face of threats to students or to professors. Those are some of the examples that I would like to comment.
Right. Do you see Milei's libertarian populism as part of a broader Latin American or global pattern of anti-statism populism, perhaps connected to figures like Bolsonaro or Trump, or as a uniquely Argentinian phenomenon?
No, of course, I believe that Milei's libertarian populism is part of a broader global anti-statism populism. He's very much in dialogue with President Trump in the United States. He admires him. He's also has contact with Bolsonaro. He's not unique, but there is a component that has been highlighted by many colleagues and in the political studies, that is that Milei has a component, an anti-national component that is not so present in the case of Bolsonaro or Trump. No? So that is something, if you may say, singular of his feature. But of course, he's in dialogue with a more global extreme right-wing movement.
Right. And lastly, Professor Rovelli, looking forward, what political, institutional, or civic initiatives could help restore faith in democratic governance and reconstruct a shared sense of purpose, the common good, in Argentina's fractured public sphere?
Well, I think here the role of universities and education in here, in general, it's a key point. They are privileged locus or spaces of disputes and tensions surrounding different educational, knowledge, science, and society projects that are there in dispute in those spaces, where common goods and public good, epistemic diversity, I should strengthen also, and substantive possibilities for democratization face critical setbacks in this scenario. So there are some initiatives of resistance and also for repositioning more democratizing processes at universities and in educational spaces that are very interesting. For example, the potential dynamism of subnational policies and local and interinstitutional alliances to carve or reverse unconstitutional or anti-democratic government measures, the complementation of legal, political, epistemological, and pedagogical strategies to reverse coercion, harassment in educational settings. Also the key role of regional and international alliances and coalitions of professors, of students, of scientists in favor of academic freedom. We should say also the articulation and intersectoriality with different social struggles of popular sectors, people that are displaced, harassed, or oppressed in our regimes, and ultimately the proliferation of common deliberative collegial, educational, and university projects in dialogue with society. So I would say that those are some of the strategies and the actions that we are carrying out in our systems.
Professor Laura Rovelli, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.